This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Visit progressive.com to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary, not available in all states or situations.
I think football is the same thing. You know, you take a difficult thing and you make it easy for the kids, and then they see it like, whoa. And then, you know, it's kind of cool. And it's through the process of teaching and stuff. And certainly we've made mistakes, but you learn from those mistakes.
We're back for another edition of National Coach of the Week presented by Modern Football Technology, the platform turning your team's film, stats, and practice data into real-time insight that helps you win. This week, we head to Wisconsin to recognize one of the state's top programs, the West De Pere Phantoms, led by head coach Chris Greisen. The Phantoms have stormed through the 2025 season unbeaten, 11-0 after a dominant playoff win over Pulaski, following a perfect 9-0 regular season and a second straight Fox River Classic Conference North title. If the name West De Pere sounds familiar, it should. Earlier this year, we've heard from their defensive coordinator, Keegan Works. Coach Greisen's leadership and culture have propelled West De Pere to one of the top spots in Wisconsin high school football, ranked number 3 statewide and earning the number 1 seed in Division II. It's a season built on toughness, trust, and teaching, principles that come straight from a head coach who spent more than a decade playing professional football before turning his passion toward developing young athletes. Before we jump into my conversation with Coach Greisen, I want to take you back to a story we featured earlier this season with his defensive coordinator, Keegan Wirtz. Coach Wirtz shared how he and his wife built one of the most innovative in-game analytics systems I've heard about at the high school level using modern football technology. While he called the defense from the sideline, she sat upstairs in the booth tagging every front, blitz, and coverage in real time. Within seconds, he had the answers he needed to adjust between series. No spreadsheet, no guesswork, just instant clarity. That's what modern football technology does. It turns your team's data into real-time insight so you can coach faster, communicate better, and win more. If you missed the episode with Coach Wirtz, we'll link it in the show notes. Now, let's hear from the head coach leading this undefeated West De Pere team, Coach Chris Greisen, our National Coach of the Week. We're back for another episode of National Coach of the Week presented by Modern Football Technology. And joining me this week is the head coach at West De Pere, Chris Greisen. Chris, congratulations on the honor and a great season thus far.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
So you guys have done a great job. Got through the regular season undefeated into the playoffs right now. Before we got going, we mentioned, before we have had Keegan Wirtz, your defensive coordinator, on the podcast before, sharing his unique story about how his wife is assisting him on game day with in-game analytics. I'll link that one in the show notes for our listeners in case they missed it. But before we get going, I do want to give you the opportunity. Obviously, this is a collective effort to recognize the guys on your staff and your team.
And you just mentioned it. I mean, anytime a head coach gets honored for Coach of the Year, that's nothing but collective, body of work by your staff and support staff. And, I think of all our coaches. I mean, you mentioned Keegan, our defense coordinator. He's been with me since I took over here and has done a tremendous job. We have a guy by the name of Matt Hansen who was started as our freshman coach. Now he's my right-hand man on offense and our offensive line coach and helps me out a ton. And then all the other guys that put in countless hours in preparing our kids, they've jumped on board with the culture. I know we'll talk about that a little bit later, but everyone's all in. And then we have people that have come forward and asked to volunteer. We have one guy on our staff. He's our equipment manager. And the funny thing about that is he came to me, he said, Coach, I just retired. I'm 65 years old and I'd like to give back to the community through the football team. I said, well, I got a perfect job for you. And he's been with us for 3 years now. So he's, 68 years old. He's the Energizer Bunny and he's the most petite man, but he has the biggest heart and he's just all about service. And so he's one of the biggest role models for our kids as far as we always talk about, like the 4 things in our program, the pillars, is we call it grit. And I'll be honest, the Detroit Lions stole it from us. We had it first. Yeah. Dan Campbell. Okay. But no, I saw it, a long time ago. It was back in the spring of 2021. I saw that word and I was like, man, it's kind of ambiguous. There's a lot of different meanings behind it. And so we sat down our leadership council and we ended up using it as an acronym. And what our kids came up with was grind, responsibility, intensity, and trust. So grind, responsibility, intensity, trust. And so we came up with that. All the kids had to memorize that. They have to know it. So if I say got grit, if I ask them that question in the hallway, they better say those 4 things. Otherwise, they have push-ups. And so it just that accountability part of it. And then we defined each one of those because some people would argue that grinding the kids into the ground isn't the best of things. And I would agree. But that's not grind to us. Grind is doing the ordinary things in an extraordinary way. Plain and simple. We're not going to do any special drills. I mean, everyone's doing the same drills. And so I tell our kids, we got to stretch better than the other team this week. We got to do this drill, our ball security drill, because I know the other team's doing it too. We have to do it better than they are. That's our mindset every day of practice. I try to remind them, of course, they're 15, 16, 17-year-old kids, that's our grind. Responsibility, do your job. That's, Bill Belichick, simple, just do your job. Everyone has a job. And then intensity, trying to teach them how to flip that switch. Playing in the NFL for a little bit and professional football and being around college football, like you see guys able to flip the switch. But high school, they kind of have to talk to them about that. You got to train them a little bit. You got to be able to do that in the weight room. Teach them how to grunt. We had to teach our kids like literally how to grunt. And now when we hear our offensive line get off the ball, they grunt, and that's part of our success. And then the last one is trust. And that for us, we defined it as playing for each other, not with each other. Because if you play for a brother, you're playing for them. It's a whole different ballgame. And so those are the things for us that we do. And again, we're mentioning my staff, all of them are on board. And we're just kind of like one fist together coaching these kids. And the kids have bought in. And it's been a tremendous year so far.
Yeah, I love the acronym and what it stands for, and that everybody needs to know it. That's an important part. As coaches, get a little bit crazy with the acronyms, but I think when you find something that everybody is locked in on and the meaning behind it, go out and live it. Good things are going to happen.
Absolutely.
Westy Pere defensive coordinator Keegan Wirtz told us his wife, who didn't even know the difference between a field goal and an extra point, ran their in-game analytics using modern football technology. It's that simple and powerful. Modern football turns your team's data into real-time insight that helps you coach smarter and win more. Learn more at modernfootball.com. Coach, you mentioned played in the NFL. Offense is near and dear to your heart. Would love to hear a little bit about your offense. You also came from an outstanding college football program in Northwest Missouri State. Did some great things there as well. Would just love to hear about the evolution and what you've brought to the high school level here.
Yeah, so I'm going to go back to college because I came from a high school team up in Sturgeon Bay, Wisconsin here. We ran the double tight eye. I averaged throwing 8 times a game. And so I tear my ACL, the good Lord bless me with tearing my ACL, and I can say that now. But I went down to Northwest Missouri State with a guy by the name of Mel Churchma and Jim Sabota, and 2 of the greatest coaches I've ever been around. And Jim Sabota was our offensive coordinator, and I learned so much from that man because we had the number 1 offense my senior year. We ended up winning the national championship. I was fortunate to play quarterback for him. And what he taught me was that you have first opportunity as the offensive team to dictate to the offense. They always have to react to you. So whether that's through tempo, through shifting, motions, cadence, all the different things, formations, they have to look at what you're doing and then react. So they're always reactionary. So now some people would disagree. I know like a guy like Peyton Manning, he was tremendous. He didn't want to move those guys. He just wanted to see it. No, there's a guy that, he's so high level. But if I can, especially at the high school level as a coach, if I can put my player in through a formation or a shift or a motion, get him a wide open receiver, I'm going to do that, you know? And so I got into high school coaching. I was still playing professionally. I was playing arena football at the time. And I just loved coaching. I loved helping kids because I wanted to give back like Jim Sabota and so many other coaches did to me. And so I started assistant coach. I was a quarterback coach. And then I had a little bit of time of calling plays. And then I got back into the NFL playing during the fall. But then eventually I retired and I started coaching assistant coach and then becoming offense coordinator. And I got to develop my own offense. And I remember we used to huddle. Then I went to wristbands and because I wanted to get more tempo. And finally, I just said, you know what? Even with wristbands, it was way too slow. It was restrictive. And so we ended up going to hand signals. Now, the one thing I would recommend to young coaches, if you're looking to develop your offense, okay, come up with words that actually have meaning. Because I was talking to some of my former athletes that have gone on to play college football, and they said, Coach, these offenses are so confusing. Like they pick random words for the passing concept. And I just kind of chuckle. I'm like, yeah, to me, you need some sort of device where, like, this word, if I use dagger, for instance, it starts with the letter D. Dagger is, well, it has some sort of dig route in it. So we have like concepts that are dagger, domino, dice, so Dallas, those are things that we have. Or if we want on the backside of things, if we want a double slant, well, we call that KISS because it has SS at the end. I'm going to tell you, you tell a high school kid that one time, they got it. They got it. And of course, we do our signals. So I'm blowing a kiss, like, oh, that makes sense. So one thing I found out is number one, the kids get it quickly. The biggest pushback came from my coaches. When I first, as an offensive coordinator, I decided to install this, and the coach was like, Coach, there's no way our kids will get it. And per coach, like every coach that said it's not going to work out came to me after the season. They said, Coach, I was wrong. This is awesome. And it's just simple. And I can call play, and I get so many more plays in. Last game, for instance, now I will say sometimes you don't get as many plays in because you're so efficient. So, for instance, and some people would say that's a bad thing. But last game, we were playing a team that tried to ground you out and control the ball. And their time of possession was like, I don't know, in a high school game, 48 minutes. I think we had it for maybe 16. So, I mean, it was, 28 minutes they had the ball more than we did. They had 74 plays. We had 51. We scored 42 points, because it was just like this. And now that team that's trying to ground it out, go ahead, because we're able to score quickly. And so my recommendation, and we went to this, it was an evolution, eventually went to all signals. And then I told one of my assistants who I mentioned before, Matt Hansen, I said, hey, I'd like to go to some one-word plays. And I don't know how to do it. And he came to me, Keith, and said, hey, I think this system would work. And we talked about it, and we tweaked it. And now, initially, he said, Coach, I'll be honest, I think we might be able to do 6, maybe 8. We have 19 one-word plays that our kids know, and we practice it. I will tell you, like, it's not just being able to create the one-word plays, but again, those devices. We have anything that one-word plays that's inside our body frame tells our receivers what to do. Anytime we have a signal outside our body frame, like, I'm doing the tomahawk chop. If I'm doing that, it's outside my body frame. They have a different RPO. They have a different route. And it's like, oh, that's easy, And so if you can find easy ways like that, oh my goodness, it has helped our offense. Our quarterback, he's also my son, but our quarterback has thrown more touchdowns and more yards in consecutive years than any quarterback in the state of Wisconsin. It is amazing. He's had 2 years of 40-plus touchdowns, over 3,000 yards per season. Last year, he ended up at 3,800. hopefully we play a couple more games. We're in round 3. We have round 4, round 5. So we have 3 more potential games to go. So who knows how high he can get, but it's not about stats, obviously. But with this offense, we've been able to do a lot of different things. And the great thing, too, is our run game. We had an all-state running back in 2022 when we went to the state championship. Unfortunately, we lost, but he was a stud, just an absolute stud. And our guy this year has less touches, but he's like within 100 and some yards of this stud. So we're able to get a lot of plays, a lot of yards, a lot of points. And of course, offensively, that's what you're looking to do, you know? So we've been very blessed. We got some great receivers, some guys that have bought in. And of course, when you wing it around, we got a lot of numbers, a lot of kids that want to catch the football, you know? So that's been a lot of fun.
Well, it's easy to fall in love with plays. I think especially today, Twitter X is just overrun with them. And they all look great. It's awesome to see a play that works well. Of course, nobody's sharing the plays that don't work well or how efficient any of those plays were. But all of this really boils down to not those plays, but how well you teach it. And that really goes to, do you understand your learners? The language you're creating for them, the ways that they're able to remember it. That's what helps execution more than anything. That's what allows them to play fast because they get it, they understand it, can go out and do it.
And you mentioned it. You hear it from Nick Sirianni, who got it from Mount Union.
Yeah, Larry Karras.
Yeah. Tremendous coach, right? And he used to say it's not plays, it's players, right? And so for us, like the reason why we tweaked our offense the way we did last year was we knew we had our quarterback coming in, a kid that could process information quickly. He's accurate, strong arm, and we had speed. We didn't have a tight end. So we ended up taking a guy and making him like a wing, a tight end / H-back and stuff like that. But our primary formation and personnel was 10 personnel. So you're right, you take that. But again, you just try to make it as complex for the defense, but as simple for you. And this is what I love doing. I'm a teacher here at West De Pere, and I teach math. And so I found my passion in being able to take very difficult things and making them easy. And I think football is the same thing. You take a difficult thing and you make it easy for the kids, and then they see it like, whoa. And then, it's kind of cool. All of a sudden people are like, man, how do you run that offense? And it's through the process of teaching and stuff. And certainly we've made mistakes, but you learn from those mistakes. And it's been a tremendous ride so far. And so hopefully we can go for another 3 games this year.
Yes, well, I appreciate you taking the time and give us some insight into it. And have to get back together with you in the offseason, talk more about this offense and dig into some of these ideas. I think in what you've talked about here in the short time, you're setting it up in a very sound way. So congratulations again on the honor of National Coach of the Week, and best of luck to you and the Phantoms the rest of the way.
Awesome. Thanks, Keith. I appreciate you having me on.
That was Chris Greisen, head coach of the undefeated West De Pere Phantoms, a program built on grit, trust, and teaching the game the right way. Their success this season is a reflection of the shared commitment of his staff, players, and community, an example of what happens when everyone is all in. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to check out our earlier episode with defensive coordinator Keegan Wirtz, who shared how his wife helps him on game day using modern football technology, the same platform powering the Phantoms' in-game analytics. Modern football turns your team's data into real-time insight that helps you prepare faster, coach smarter, and win more. Learn more and book a demo at modernfootball.com.